O my God, this thy servant hath advanced towards thee, is passionately wandering in the desert of thy love, walking in the path of thy service, anticipating thy favours, hoping for thy bounty, relying upon thy kingdom, and intoxicated by the wine of thy gift. O my God, increase the fervour of his affection for thee, and the constancy of his praise of thee, and the ardour of his love for thee. Verily, thou art the most generous, the Lord of grace abounding. There is none other God but thee, the forgiving, the merciful.
O Son of Being, love me that I may love thee. If thou lovest me not, my love can in no wise reach thee. O Son of Being, love me that I may love thee. If thou lovest me not, my love can in no wise reach thee. Know this, O servant, know this, O servant, know this, O servant, know this, O servant. O Son of Being, love me that I may love thee. If thou lovest me not, my love can in no wise reach thee. O Son of Being, love me that I may love thee. If thou lovest me not, my love can in no wise reach thee. Know this, O servant, know this, O servant, know this, O servant, know this, O servant.
Okay, so we can start.
Yes.
Wonderful.
So if you go to Zoom, then you can click on share screen, the green box with the arrow pointing up. Oh,
It disappeared again.
yes. Now we can see your screen. We can see your screen. Now we just want to see your notes and the.
There you are. Can you?
Yes, now we see them. Wonderful.
Okay, fine.
Look at you
Now,
and technology.
thank you. Who was the one who did this hidden words? Was it Dariush with the guitar?
Yes, it was a hidden word. Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, it was Dariush.
Dariush Rashidi, wonderful Dariush John. That was great. Okay. Last time, what did we do? We did paragraphs 5 and 6, right?
I believe so.
Yes. Who is the volunteer to just share with us very briefly what we discussed last time? Please, whoever was present last time. Somebody? No? No? Then we have to volunteer you, Louis, again.
I think people are getting tired of hearing my voice now.
No, that's fine. You know, I don't want to talk too much too.
Well,
I think if everybody, it'll be nice to have everybody sharing their opinions, their ideas. It would be nice. We all learn from each other.
I agree. Well, maybe I can start, and then
If somebody can
jump in, yeah.
jump in.
Well, one thing we talked about was these indignities, these difficulties and wrongdoings inflicted upon the manifestations and prophets of God, and that these are actually means by which we can become more steadfast in the cause of God in our faith. So it's something we should spend time reading about. These will help us understand also the greatness of these manifestations, as they are able to endure these inhumane things. And we also talked about the soul and how that may perchance wing its flight to that station of certitude.
Yes.
We also talked about the Surah of Hud and how we can attain this level or this station of certitude if we look back at the texts, the writings before. And I guess we just have to understand the inner meaning, the true meaning, to be able to understand what they actually mean.
Yeah. Anyone else with any points?
If I can also add something, Dr. Beheshti.
Yes.
I remember last time we also spoke difference between the two terms, prophets and messengers of God.
Yes.
And another thing I found it very interesting, you mentioned that the difference between these messengers of God is not their station, but the intensity of their revelation. And I remember we focused and clarified what intensity of their revelation meant. So those were the two ideas I remember from last session quite clearly.
Yes, very good.
We also briefly mentioned about the pure heart and how, as we have mentioned a couple of times, that this certitude or knowledge is bestowed upon us by God in our hearts. It's not an intellectual journey, but really it's a spiritual journey. And we also talked about how the heart can be a symbol of our soul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see, one of the very outstanding point that is new for the whole world, which is in this book, is that Baha'u'llah has made it very clear to us that all these prophets all these messengers of God who come from God have to be respected, have to be honored as such, and we must deepen ourselves in their writings and the history of these manifestations of God. You see how in that paragraph, actually paragraph 4 and 5, in which Baha'u'llah quotes the two Quranic verses, how respectfully he says that these divine verses that we read and the Surah of Hud, which is one of the very big chapters in Quran, which talks about those messengers, those prophets and messengers of the past, how we should read and study Quran to be able to understand them. So Surah of Hud, or the chapter on Hud, which is chapter 23rd, chapter 11, but has 123 verses. Actually, with reading these quotations from Quran and other holy books that Baha'u'llah gives here, the way he presents it, it makes sense when we read it. Because otherwise, when you go and read Quran, for example, or Bible, then, well, at least myself, I couldn't understand what the meaning of them were. But now when you read those, it becomes very clear. And to study Quran, if you go online, Quran is very nicely given. It gives the original verses, and the translation in English is along with it. So if you search, for example, the Surah of Hud, and you want to study those, the stories of all these prophets like Hud and Noah and Saleh and Abraham, they are all there. Very interesting to read. Yeah, very good. And I think you did make the point here about Baha'u'llah saying that if we study the history of what happened with these manifestations of God, it not only makes us understand the position of these messengers better, but we also, it strengthens our faith in Baha'u'llah and the Bab now. Okay, is there any other points anybody wants to add from last time?
Did you also, can I say something? I'm Roya.
Hello, Roya John. Yes, please.
I think also you talked about the part that it was being told, ponder for a moment and reflect upon that which has been the cause of such denials to the part of those who came. That all the manifestation of God to come, and people of the world, they've been waiting for them, but then they did not recognize them when they came. So they persecuted them, they laughed at them, and that was another part that I think we does.
Sure. Sure. Yes, very good point. I think we this one is repeated in other paragraphs as well as we go along.
Thank you, Roya. That reminded me that it was also shared that the word ponder appears 23 times in the Iran. So that also shows that this book is not just to read and then do something else, but really to ponder on its meanings.
Yes.
And then we also mentioned that heart seems to appear 82 times in the book.
Yes.
Which is also quite remarkable, I think.
53 times is this thing about thinking and pondering, right?
Specifically, the word ponder, I've counted it to be 23 times.
Just ponder or other things like that, like meditate?
Just
Or,
ponder and also meditate and reflect upon. Those I haven't counted with, unfortunately.
yes, how interesting, yes. See, this points to us the importance of what do you call the independent investigation of truth as such, generally, because most of the people from the older religion, they depend on the religious leaders of what their understanding is and how they guide them. But Baha'u'llah says to avoid that and start thinking yourself. That's why he keeps on telling us, ponder, meditate, reflect. You see? Good, yes. We also read about and discussed the question of the bread and manna, which is the nourishment and that we are soul, spiritual nourishment that we achieve through the manifestations of God by their revelation. The word, the revelation of these messengers of God are the bread of life. Yeah? Okay.
Rostam,
Yes, Badijan.
I'm just, you talked about the children of negation.
Yes.
In the 5th paragraph,
Yes.
it says, examining the wondrous behavior of the prophets and recall the defamation and denials uttered by the children of negation.
Yes.
I couldn't understand properly what was the children of negation meant hereby.
Well, anyone wants to explain that? Because we discussed it last time. Please, one of you who was there last time.
Is that talking about people who don't listen?
That voice is cut off. I don't know, is it me or everybody else?
No, the voice is not coming through clearly.
Who is that? May?
Sorry, it's me. I'm Roya.
Oh, Roya.
I was wondering whether it's the children of negation is people who do not listen and they keep denying and saying no.
Yes, it is. Yes, Baha'u'llah, some places he says letters of negation, children of negation, and so on. And so they are the ones who actually deny the prophets. They are against them. They are the ones who cause infliction and trouble onto the prophets of God. All these kinds of people are included in this category of negation, being negative about it. You see, the unbelievers, the non-believers, you see, generally speaking.
Rosarjan, it's not just the unbelievers, isn't it? It's the unbelievers that take active and negative reaction
Yes,
towards the prophet.
of course.
Can I just say?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Even the ones who simply deny. You see, in the tablet of Ahmad, what do we read? That if people don't recognize this, they haven't recognized any of the messengers of the past. So they are also people of negation. They're just negative people. who are proud about what they believe is right.
People who contradict or deny something, it's the actual meaning of tradition. Contradiction or denial, that's similar to what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, there are categories of them. There are the ones who did a lot of cruelty. Then there are those who were impartial and just disbelieved and so on. So they all become as people or letters of negation, I think.
Thank you.
Okay. Shall we move on to paragraph 7? If you're agreeable that somebody reads paragraph 7, and then we'll see if few of us can kind of share what your understanding is of just reading the paragraph. Then we can go into more detail about it. Someone, please.
Dr. Beheshti, if you would like me to, I can, if no one else.
Okay, please.
Well, it's quite large. Paragraph 7.
Paragraph 7, yeah.
This was Noah. For 950 years he prayerfully exhorted his people and summoned to the haven of security and peace. None, however, heeded his call. Each day they inflicted on his blessed person such pain and suffering that no one believed he could survive. How frequently they denied him, how malevolently they hinted their suspicion against him. Thus it hath been revealed. And as often as a company of his people passed by him, they derided him. To them he said, Though ye scoff at us now, and we will scoff at you hereafter, even as ye scoff at us. In the end ye shall know. Long afterward, he several times promised victory to his companions, and fixed the hour thereof. But when the hour struck, the divine promise was not fulfilled. This caused a few among the small number of his followers to turn away from him, and to this testify the records of the best-known books. These you must certainly have perused, if not, undoubtedly you will. Finally, as stated in books and traditions, there remained with him only 40 or 72 of his followers. At last, from the depth of his being, he cried aloud, Lord, leave not upon the land a single dweller from among the unbelievers.
So there are a lot of points in this that we need to perhaps discuss and clarify it for ourselves. First of all, Noah, I have made some notes so we can read the notes a little bit later, but see if anybody can share any ideas about Noah that they might have. Okay, he was one of the oldest prophets who appeared in the region of Mesopotamia, which we will go into detail. It covers the areas where the Southwest Asia, which includes Iraq, Egypt, the Middle East, and so on. And he says, Baha'u'llah says, for 950 years. Does it mean that he lived for 950 years?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. What would it be?
Is it that the span of his like the, I don't know, his revelation?
During the dispensation, yes, revelation. Yeah, that's one point, yes. And also we will read where Shovi Effendi is quotation about this, that he says that in those days, the counting of the years was different to ours and so on. So yes, he couldn't have lived that long. Yeah. Right. So like any other prophet, mind you, he said, Baha'u'llah says that in the next few paragraphs, he's going to give the account of some of these prophets. So this is one of them. Noah is one of them. Okay? Anything else you understand from this paragraph? You see, and these, Baha'u'llah says that these evil-minded people, none of them believed in what he was guiding them for. And then in the Quran, this verse refers to Noah, and it says, and as often as a company of his people passed by him, they derided him. Deride means to make fun of him, to ridicule him. And can you imagine that somebody with that kind of position, that ordinary people passing by him and making fun of him would be like? And then he said to them, though you scoff at us now, we will scoff at you hereafter. Scoff means about the same meaning. It has to ridicule, to humble people, to make fun. So he says, as much you're making fun of us now, hereafter we will make fun of you. What does hereafter means here?
From now on? From now on?
Yes, it is, yes. I think so, because when I first was reading this before, I thought this meant the next world. But then I went into the dictionary. It's called the Kitáb-i-Íqán in Persian. It's a dictionary which explains all these terms and phrases in Iran by a very outstanding scholar of Iran. His name was Mr. Eshraq Khavari. He's written 4 volumes of books on the Kitáb-i-Íqán. And about this point, he actually says, soon after this. It is meant soon after this. But also it doesn't mean that in the next world they will have, possibly they will suffer as well in the next world too. You see? And of course, here, as we will see from the history of Noah, which we'll read soon, that the God's wrath descended on them, and they were destroyed by a flood. Of course, the flood is symbolic in the Baha'i faith, but somehow, whatever form it was, it is said that those people of negation at that time, they were destroyed by the wrath of God. Okay. And then again, there is this phrase here that when the hour struck, the divine promise was not fulfilled, because Noah had promised them that, soon God will, punish the enemies of the believers. And 3 or 4 times this promise was given to them, but when the time came, it never happened. And so some of the believers, even the believers, they became doubtful because of this, and they left the faith of Noah. So this is a test. When something like this is promised to mankind, and then visibly it doesn't happen, then people start doubting. And that is the time that we are put through a test. You see? Anything anybody else wants to say?
It's just what we read earlier, that where Baha'u'llah also quotes the Quran, saying that, or I think it's earlier, where it says, do you not think that if you say you believe that you shall be tested?
Yes.
And then also the last part where it says, he cried aloud, Lord, leave not upon the land a single dweller from among the unbelievers. So we're always being tested in our faith.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, now he tells the uncle in this paragraph that what he's saying, what he's mentioning in this paragraph, he says they are all mentioned in the best books known. Now he's referring to the books of the Imams of the Shia sect of Islam. They have traditions or ahadith, which are written by some of the Imams. The most prominent one was Imam Ali, the first Imam, and the 6th Imam, Imam Ja'far Sadiq, who have written books. And in those books, they have described these stories as well. So he says to the uncle of the Bab, Haji Mirza Sayyid Muhammad, that if you refer to these books, you surely have read it. If you haven't read it, you will read it, he says to him. And then he says, of course, he finally has stated in the books, traditions, there remain with him only 40 or 72 of his followers. You see, 40 or 72 doesn't actually mean the exact number, but it means the fewness of his followers. How sad. But then Quran, he quotes Quran, which says that Noah prayed to God that to leave not upon the land a single dweller from among the unbelievers. This Baha'u'llah has confirmed it here, and it's in the Quran, that Noah actually prayed to God to destroy them. Again, this one wants to know why is this kind of curse that the Prophet of God is wishing on the people. And again, Mr. Eshraqavari in his books, he says, because these people were unbelievers and they were kafir, as they call it, the ones who deny, infidels, and therefore Prophet Noah didn't wish these people to remain on earth, produce offsprings, so the offsprings follow their parents. That is the reason Mr. Eshraqavari is given for this. This verse of the Quran. Okay, now let's see. I have got a few notes from here and there prepared, which goes into a little bit more detail about what we just discussed.
Rostam June,
Jana.
can it also be, it could be a prayer to God that he was praying that everybody on earth becomes a believer?
Obviously, it's a prayer, yes, to God.
Yeah, but not in a bad way, not to kill them off or something, but just to make them believe in God.
Probably it's a good way of looking at it. Yes, it could be, could well be. Because obviously what he wanted, that all the people people that were in that area, that they became followers and they all were guided into the right place. Obviously, that's what he wanted. It was his aim. He was prophet of God to do that. Yes, so obviously. But the ones who were hopeless, then he's praying to God so they don't live on earth. Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it as well, I think, personally, but I don't know. What about others?
Rosam, is it possible that Noah was troubled by his people so much, that the intensity was so much, that a prophet, a messenger of God reached a stage where he prays to God that none of his believers should live?
Yes, of course, yes, of course. I mean, all of the prophets, because of the cruelty of the people of their time, have gone through this, ordeal. And, we see in the history that even Prophet Muhammad, at a time, he had prayed to God that the earth opens up and he gets buried into it. He was that much tortured by the people. And then from the tablet, from the fire tablet, we see how Baha'u'llah suffered.
Yeah.
And how he is asking God the help. You see?
Yeah.
Of course. I think, yes. Anyway, if someone reads this, Louis, you're asking me to, is requesting remote control? You wanted remote control?
Just press cancel. It was just to see all the notes, but you figured it out.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, if we read this 7 paragraphs. Somebody read it, please.
Maybe someone who hasn't read yet.
Can you see it? Can everyone see it on the screen? Okay. One of you please read at least a part of this paragraph.
Yes, paragraph 7.
Yes.
Okay, paragraph 7. Noah. Noah's story is contained in the Hebrew Bible in the book of Genesis. He is also in the Quran as Nuh. Noah, Arabic Nuh, is recognized in Islam as a prophet and apostle of God. He's an important figure in Islamic traditions, as he is one of the earliest prophets sent by God to mankind. According to Islam, Nuh's mission was to warn the people who were plunged in depravity and sin. God charged Nuh with the duty of preaching to his people to abandon idol worship and to worship the only one God, and to live good and pure lives, but they refused to mend their ways. As a result, the wrath of God descended on them in the form of the great flood, destroying all lives on earth. Before the flood, God instructed Nuh to build the ark and take on board his family and few animals in order to save mankind and all animals on land from extinction.
Okay. Can we stop here and see if people have any opinions, any points to discuss? You see, it says Islam recognizes Noah as prophet as well as apostle of God. And we discussed this last time, didn't we? The difference. Because all the major prophets, the universal prophets, as Abdul Baha calls them in some answered question, they have this both functions of prophethood and apostle. So apostle is the one that carries, that brings, reveals a book like Quran and Aqdas and Bible and so on. So he establishes on his own a religion. He also has this function of prophesizing the future. For example, we say Muhammad was the last Nabi or the last prophet, because in one sense, in the Adamic cycle, Muhammad was the last Nabi, or someone who gives a news, to give the news of the coming of the new age in which the Bab and Baha'u'llah appeared as the starters of this new cycle, which is going to last at least 500,000 years. So others like Moses and Jesus and so on, before Muhammad, they were also Nabi as well as Rasul. Nabi in the sense that they foretold or prophesied the return of themselves in the form that Bab and Baha'u'llah appeared. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So these people were idol worshippers. They did not believe in the unity of God, and they didn't have a pure and good life. So Noah was trying to mend their ways of life. And because they refused to obey him, a flood, it is said that God sent a flood which destroyed them. That's well known about Noah. And also the ark of Noah is well known. That God instructed him to build an ark and to take some of the people who were believers, and there were few in number, and also different species of animal on board of this ark to safety, so that they, mankind as well as the animals, are saved from extinction. And I think extinction here means probably saving them spiritually, because they are symbolic. The ark and the flood and all that seem to be symbolic.
Dr. Beheshti,
Sir,
I have an unusual point to bring out.
who is that?
It's Oshan from England.
Oshan, yes, please.
It's to do with the 72. Finally, where does it say? As stated in the books and traditions, there remained with him only 40 and 72 of his followers.
Yes.
And 72, I'm not sure about 40, but 72 is a number that repeats a lot in religious, in the books and things, and I can list, so I have some written down. But what just jumped out at me.
No, good.
It's a silly one, but you know, it's famous that Noah took in the animals 2 by 2 or something like that. Yes. But actually, he took in 7 of every clean animal and 2 of every unclean animal, which is 7 and 2.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I just thought that just jumped out at me. So
no, that's good. That's
more
good.
mystical references, even hidden there with Noah.
Yes. Yes. Interesting. Yes. Okay. Okay, somebody continue reading, please. The Bible. Go on then, please, someone.
I can read.
Thank
the
you.
Bible makes no reference to Noah until he's said to be 500 years old. And at that age, he becomes the father of 3 sons.
That's a miracle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Noah appears in Genesis as a son of Lamech,
yes.
Lamech, and 9th in descent from Adam.
Yes.
In the story of the name given to Noah's flood, the history of which is recorded in Genesis 7 and 8, he is represented as the patriarch who, because of his blameless piety, was chosen by God to perpetuate the human race, after his wicked contemporaries had perished in the flood. He was born in Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is located in the region now known as the Middle East, which includes, I cannot see the rest of it.
Oh, sorry.
Move it up, please.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Can you?
Yes, which includes parts of Southwest Asia and the lands around the Eastern Mediterranean Sea, situated in the fertile valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates River. The region is now home to modern-day Iraq, Kuwait, Turkey, and Syria. Noah is therefore presumed to have appeared amongst the people in this region.
Okay.
The tomb of
Okay, just 1 minute, Paranakja. Yes, so there are 2 or 3 points worthwhile remembering, perhaps. So Noah was 9th generation from Adam, right? And he's one of the first one that we know something about. And he appeared in this region, Mesopotamia, which is mentioned. If you imagine the map, and the Arabian Peninsula is below that region, and it is where the other 5 messengers or prophets that is mentioned in Quran appeared. And they were Hud, Saleh, Ibrahim, Shoaib, and Muhammad. All 5 of these appeared for the Arabian people. But Noah, before them, was in that Mesopotamia region, which includes Iraq, Kuwait, Turkey, and Syria. And the name, I think it's Hebrew, which means between 2 rivers. And it was a fertile land between river Tigris and Euphrates River. So if you look at the map, you will see that the Sinai Peninsula, which is now included in Egypt, is part of that. And below and to the right in the map is the Arabian Peninsula. So 2 areas, one in which 5 of these prophets mentioned in the Quran appeared, and Noah appeared in that other area. Okay.
Rosa.
Yes.
So that could be the prayer, because Noah asked God, don't let any non-believers live here. So he kept sending prophets into that area.
Right.
So they don't remain a non-believer.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's the point you mentioned. Good. Right.
Or maybe God felt sorry for them and didn't want to kill them, so he kept trying to
Sending people to them.
yes, to guide them.
Of course, yeah. And yes, yeah.
I think also that the Rizwan garden is in between these 2 rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, which is quite remarkable also.
It is, yes. Anyone else?
So what does it mean when it says that in the Bible, no reference to Noah until he's said to be 500 years old? What actually it means? Do you have any explanation for that?
Well, it means that nothing much is known from the Bible or perhaps from Quran either about his earlier age, about his childhood, about his youth, and so on. That's what I understood, because only what happened to these messengers and how they became, and the guide for the people of those days is mentioned in these verses of Quran and the Bible, mainly Genesis, book of Genesis, which describes Noah. And it says, when he was 500 years, whatever is said about him. I think this is what is meant.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Who's going to read the next part? Come on, somebody.
Yeah.
Yes, buddy.
The tomb of Noah is believed by some to be in the city of Nakhchivan, Azerbaijan. But there are several other sites which are claimed to be his grave. Example is Damavand in Iran, Najaf in Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey.
Yeah. So you see, we don't know where he's buried. It's still, these areas mentioned are the place where Prophet Noah appeared. The areas is included in that. But we don't know which one is the right one. Right, buddy? Carry on.
Note that the story of the ark and the flood we believe are symbolic, written by Shoghi Effendi in a letter to an individual in October 1949.
So yeah, it's not real. I mean, the ark as well as the flood is not real. That's what the Guardian says. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
The following is taken from paragraph 162 of Kitáb-i-Íqán about Noah. Should we go and read it or?
Yes, please. Yes. It explains a little bit more about Noah by Baha'u'llah.
Among the prophets was Noah. When he was invested with the robe of prophethood and was moved by the Spirit of God to arise and proclaim his cause. Whoever believed in him and acknowledged his faith was endowed with grace of new life. It could be truly said that he was reborn and revived inasmuch as previous to his belief in God and his acceptance of his manifestation, he had set his affection on the things of the world, such as attachment to earthly goods, to wife, children, food, drink, and the like. So much so that in the daytime and in the night season, his one concern had been to amass riches and procure for himself the means of employment, enjoyment, and pleasure. Aside from these things, before his partaking of the reviving waters of faith, he had been so wedded to the tradition of his forefathers and so passionately devoted to the observance of their custom laws that he would have preferred to suffer death rather than violate one letter of those superstitious forms and manners currently amongst his people.
See? So who is he talking about, Baha'u'llah, here? Of him it could be truly said, and he carries on talking about this person.
Isn't about
Yeah?
Noah?
But Noah?
No. Actually, he's giving an example of the person who becomes a believer. How he changes. You see, he says, first, before becoming a believer, he had interest in all these things, all the worldly, all the earthly things. Yes? And his concern was to gather riches. for himself and enjoy the life and have pleasure. That was his concern. But once he became a believer, and even he was so much devoted to the customs of his forefathers, his father, that he was ready to give his life rather than give one letter of that kind of superstitions away. But once he became a believer, then a whole new life. He sacrificed all those physical, all those earthly things. You see? Is there anyone who understands anything different to this or has any other points to share with us?
Is that what detachment means? Complete detachment?
Absolutely, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Just to point out how he is addressing Noah and the believer. There's a capital H for Noah and a small h for the believer, as I understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. If not, then we'll move on to the next notes about the 950 years and so on. And someone, please?
Can you read it?
Please scroll down.
Can you scroll down? Yes, please.
You have a volunteer?
Yes.
Could you scroll down, Beck? Lovely.
I thought you would know it by heart. Go on. Who is doing it? Oshan, you want to do it?
With my pleasure. 950 years.
Mm-hmm.
Noah, one of the ancient prophets, is supposed to have lived for 950 years. The Guardian advises that the period of 950 years, referred to in the Íqán as the time Noah exhorted the people, refers to the period of his ministry. The term does not refer to a period of time such as our year. It was entirely different and thus does not extend over any such period as our present term year would imply. Approximately 6,000 years have elapsed since the appearance of Adam. The ages of the prophets specified in the Bible were based on a different calculation than the one used at present. The years mentioned in the Bible were different from ours.
Yeah. So these two quotations are from our Guardian, and they explain what it means. Interesting, isn't it, to know that in the olden days they had different calculation for the time, for the years and so on. I wonder if anyone has any knowledge about that. You see, I think it was Farana Khanum who said that these years refers to the period of the ministry, and that's one of the points that the Guardian says. And the other is that it's not the same duration of time that we have it in this age. It was different in those ages. Okay, so that's quite clear as well, yes? If there is no other point, we move on to the other paragraph. Somebody, please.
I can read, Jamila.
Such pain and suffering. Jamila.
Such pain and suffering, according to tradition attributed to Imam Sadiq, Noah was several times so badly beaten by the
Lost the sound.
His sound cut off. Hello?
infidels that his. Would you like me to read again?
Yes, please.
Such pain and suffering, according to tradition attributed to Imam Sadiq, Noah was several times so badly beaten by the infidels that his ears would gush with blood and he would for a time lose consciousness. Noah's followers would beg him to ask God to punish the unbelievers, but Noah would instead pray for them.
Okay. So that also explains that how severe was the opposition and cruelty on him. Also here it makes a point that earlier Paranak mentioned that maybe he prayed for others to believe, and it appears that Noah, instead of punishing them, asking God to punish them, here it says he would instead pray for them, which makes your point, Paranak Khanum. Okay, now the other paragraph. Yes. In that paragraph that it is said that Baha'u'llah says that some of the believers in Noah, they lost their faith in him because of the prophecy that he had said that God would punish their enemies, but it did not happen. So this paragraph explains what it was, and it's quite interesting. Please, someone?
I'm happy to read if you like.
Yes, please, go on.
From where?
The divine promise was not fulfilled.
Okay. The divine promise was not fulfilled. The non-fulfilled, wait a minute. Thank you.
Sorry.
Cheers. The non-fulfillment of a prophetic announcement owing to a change in the divine purpose is an accepted theological principle in Islam, and is confirmed in the Baha'i writings. With regard to the specific promise mentioned and recorded in the best-known books, this refers to accounts in renowned Muslim traditions attributed to the sixth Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, which relate how God told Noah to inform his followers that after eating dates, they should plant the seeds, and that once these grew to fruition, divine punishment would descend on their enemies. When the fresh fruits appeared, Noah was asked about the promised punishment. He said that God now wanted them to plant the seeds of this new fruit. And when they bore dates, then the punishment would come. As stated in the Íqán, this caused a few among the small number of his followers to turn away from him. The test, according to the traditions, was later repeated twice again with the same result. Finally, God's command came to build the ark, which would protect all those who had persevered through the tests from the flood and would overtake the non-believers. In the Persian Bayan, the Bab explains that the non-fulfillment of divine promise is another expression of God's power to do whatsoever he wills. No one can oppose this because his decree is just. Non-fulfillment, when it concerns creation, is related to weakness and limitation of the creatures. But when it is attributed to God, it is evident of his might and power.
Good. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So again, this is a test for the believers. You know, when this promise, whatever it was, caused a few among the small number of his followers to turn away from him. And it's very, very easy for us to fall into that kind of trap as well. So we should all really pray at all times that we stay steadfast against this kind of tests. Any opinion by anybody? Anyone who wants to say something?
The example here for in the Babi dispensation, for example, the Bab, after his pilgrimage to Mecca, was meant to go to Karbala to meet all the believers there.
Yes.
And this was an example of how is it in Arabic? Badra, or what was the Bada. So that was the example in the Babi dispensation of God changing the Bada,
yes.
and instead went back to Shiraz.
Yes.
Yeah. That reminded me.
Wonderful. Yes. Yes. And
sort of maybe a silly example, but this test of Noah, where they were asked to plant the seeds, you will get wood or tree from that, and then that you can use when the flood would come, as a metaphor. So maybe that can be understood as when we pass these tests, we will then later be able to
understand.
Yeah, understand, or to be saved, from the flood.
Yes. You see, yes, it's very interesting because even some of the messages, some of the writings from our beloved Universal House of Justice, occasionally it might sound to contrary of what we think. And sometimes we question it. And isn't there in the writings or places where Abdul Baha says, if you don't understand anything, just obey it, and eventually it'll work out to be right. And it would be exactly like what you're saying, Louis. I think there is always a wisdom as well in these kind of things.
I'm sorry to speak too much.
Oh, fine.
But,
please do.
Specifically, Gleanings 88 talks about that, about how I posted it there, but where is it? The fears and agitation which the revelation of this law provokes in men's hearts should indeed be likened to the cries of a suckling babe weaned from his mother's milk, if ye be them that perceive. We don't understand always these things, but and they might be painful for us or difficult, but in the end it's all part of the plan of God. And yeah,
it's a big test. Yes, it was paragraph 88, did you say, the Gleaning?
Yeah, number 88. Yeah,
I made a note of it. Good. Wonderful.
I think Sally raised her hand.
Sally, go on.
Yes, I just, I don't see that there's any more elaboration on this, and I'm wondering if you can elaborate on the meaning of the flood and the ark. I understand that it's symbolic. Many Christians literally do believe in in the ark. So I just wondered if you could expand on the real meaning.
Yes. Anyone would want to comment on that? That's a very good question.
I have an idea which is purely based on my own understanding, so it could be so wrong.
Yes, obviously, yes.
But often the writings is referred to as an ocean, and maybe what he revealed would be a test to many people, and they would not be able to understand it unless they were on the board of faith, maybe we could say. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, it's a point, yes. Anyone else? It would be nice if anyone knows of any writings like Abdul Baha's explanation or anything in the writing about the meaning of the flood and the ark. It would be nice to know that. I tried looking it up, but I couldn't find it. But possibly, you know, again, personal understanding is that the flood is maybe the wrath of God is that people who do not obey the commandments of the prophet, they will spiritually suffer one way or the other. And you see, people talk about hell and heaven, and in the writings we see that heaven is, for the Baha'is, when we go to the next world, the nearer we are to God, it's heaven for those people, and the further away is hell for people. So maybe it means that kind of punishment, that kind of punishment that we have brought it on ourselves. And the ark is the opposite. I think the ark is for the believers who are in the ark. They are the ones who go nearer to God because spiritually they are saved, because they become believers. At least this is, you know, just a personal understanding. Sally, do you have any ideas yourself?
I've always considered that the ark was symbolic, and I think even in the Baha'i writings, we encountered the term ark several times. But it leads me to wonder, you know, since we believe it's symbolic, you know, why does this story go on and talk about the animals being saved and so on and so on? I just think that's interesting. Maybe it's just written that way for the understanding of the people at that time.
Yes, there is a lot of reference in the writing about ark. For example, on Mount Carmel, the ark we talk about is not the semicircular ark, ARC, but it's the ark, ARK, that is, you know, talking about the universal house of justice, being the captain of that ark that will sail the ark with the people in it onto safety, will guide them. So we do talk about ark, and that's symbolic in this way, that we all, as believers, we are in this ship, in this ark that will sail us to safety. Ocean, Baha'u'llah talks about ocean as well, and there are a lot of mention in the ocean. In the first paragraph of this book, he talks about the safety of the shore of the ocean of understanding.
In one of Abdul Baha's prayer, he also mentions, I can't remember the full prayer, but he says, Ark of Deliverance.
Yes.
There's a mention there as well.
Yeah. So yes,
Rostam John.
Jana.
In the BahaiTeachings.org, they say that, and then well, it says that the ark is like the new revelation, and the flood is with which the old things are washed away. So if you go on the ark, you are just accepted a new revelation, and the flood is what takes away all the old ways that people had, destroys the earth for the renewal of the new revelation.
Right, right.
That's what they have explained it of.
Okay. Good. Anyone else? No? Okay. We still have some to read, and it looks like we won't be able to do any more paragraphs, just this one tonight. Okay. What about next paragraph? Best known books. This is straightforward if somebody reads it quickly. Louis, you want to do it? As I can see your picture.
Maybe someone else can volunteer.
Leila, are you there?
I think she's not here.
Leila is not here. I don't know, I can't see everybody. Whoever, please.
Okay. The best known books. This refers to accounts in renowned Shiite Muslim tradition attributed to the sixth Imam, Ja'far-i-Sadiq. The following is a brief account of how Islam branched into two main sects of Shiite and Sunni, each division following either the Imams or the Caliphs, respectively. It is worth noting that in the Baha'i writings, it appears that the Shiites are recognized to be the rightful followers of Islam after Muhammad. Following the passing of Prophet Muhammad in 632 AC, Islam was divided into two major divisions, the Shiite and the Sunni sects. The Shiite followed the Imams, the first of whom was Imam Ali, followed by other 10 Imams. The 12th Imam is believed to have gone into hiding and will reappear on the Day of Judgment as the return of Mahdi. The Sunnis, on the other hand, follow the Caliphs. The role of each Caliph is both a religious as well as the political leader. The first of the Caliphs was Abu Bakr, the father of Aisha, the wife of Prophet Muhammad.
Good. So you knew about this, yes? About the Islam division into Shia and Muslim, Shia and Sunni. And I've got, following this, I've got the Imams, the 11 Imams names, which is very useful to have. And previous to this, in paragraphs, we kept on mentioning Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, who wrote books as traditions or hadith, which is traditions of Islam. And a lot of these hadiths or ahadith, the plural is ahadith, these traditions, Baha'u'llah actually mentions in this book as we go along, and he agrees that they are inspired verses revealed by these Imams. And a lot of them relate to the coming of the Bab and Baha'u'llah. Now, it is very important for the Baha'is to know about these imams in the Shiite sect, because it appears, as it was said earlier, that Baha'u'llah has given the right to the Shiite sects of Islam as the authentic followers of Muhammad, you know. So let's read the next paragraph, and it explains all the 11 very briefly, one after the other. These imams, they became successors of their father mainly, except for one or two who were either nephews or people like that. All their sons were successors of the imam before, until 11 imam. The names of all of them are as follows. If somebody reads it, please. Ocean, you want to do it? In your lovely British.
I could try and do my Turkish accent if that helps.
Okay.
From the first Imam.
Okay.
Where from exactly?
For Shia Islam.
Okay, Shia Islam. They follow the Imams. First Imam, Imam Ali, was the second cousin and a son-in-law of Prophet Muhammad. He was son of Abi Talib, who is the son of Abd al-Muttalib, paternal uncle of Muhammad. Ali was married to Fatima and Umama, the daughter and granddaughter of Muhammad respectively. Umama's mother was Zainab, was Muhammad's other daughter. Zainab was Muhammad's other daughter. Imam Ali was martyred with a sword while praying. His sons Hassan and Hussein succeeded him as second and third Imams respectively. His book of traditions, Naj al-Balagha, the way of eloquence, is well known amongst the Shia Islam. Second Imam, Imam Hassan, first son of Imam Ali and Fatima, daughter of the Prophet Muhammad. He was martyred by poisoning in 670 AD and is buried in Medina, Saudi Arabia. Third Imam, Imam Hussein, the second son of Imam Ali and Fatima, succeeded his brother as the third Imam, was martyred in Karbala along with 72 other companions. His shrine is in Karbala, Iraq. The Battle of Karbala was fought on 10th of October, 680 AD, 10 Muharram in the year 61 AH of the Islamic calendar, between the army of the second Umayyad Caliph, Yazid I, one of the caliphs, and a small army led by Imam Hussein bin Ali, the grandson of the Islamic prophet Muhammad at Karbala, Iraq. Would you like me to continue, Dr. Peshti?
Yes, but do you find this information interesting?
Okay, fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin, succeeded his father, Imam Hussein, as the fourth Imam. Hussein's other son, Ali, was the only son from his second wife, Shar Banu, who was the daughter of Yazdegerd, the last Sasanian king of Persia. Fifth Imam.
Yes, you know this one here, Shar Banu, who was Zainul, the only son of Shar Banu. He was the daughter of Yazdegerd, the king of the Sasanian king of Persia. And one of the lines of descendant of Baha'u'llah one is through Abraham, and the other one is through this Sasanian king of Iran. So this is related to our faith, yes. Okay. Fifth Imam, go on.
Fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad Baqir, who was son of Ali, son of Imam Hussein, and brother of Zainul Abidin, succeeded his uncle Zainul Abidin as the fifth Imam. Sixth Imam, Imam Jafar-i-Sadiq. Sadiq means truthful. Imam Jafar was son of Muhammad, son of Hussein, has written books in which, amongst other traditions, he has prophesied the coming of Mehdi, the Gaim, as well as the return of Hussein, the Bab and Baha'u'llah, respectively.
You see, Baha'u'llah's name was Hussein Ali. So this is referred to the Bab, who was a Qaim or Mahdi, and Baha'u'llah Hussein. This is this book, Imam Jafar-i-Sadiq gives these traditions which refers very clearly to Bab and Baha'u'llah, even by their names. Okay. Seventh Imam. Please.
And if you'll move down in a second, Dr. Beshti. Seventh Imam, Imam Musa Kazim. He was the sixth Imam. He was the son of sixth Imam Jafar-i-Sadiq, who had two sons. The first one died before him. The second one, Reza, succeeded him as the eighth. Eighth Imam, Imam Reza or Imam Ali Reza, was son of the seventh Imam Musa. He was martyred in Mashhad, Persia, by poisoning and is buried in Mashhad, in the province of Khurasan, Iran. Ninth Imam, Imam Muhammad Taqi, succeeded his father Imam Reza. He died early in his ministry. 10th Imam, Imam Ali Naqi, succeeded his father Taqi as the 10th Imam. He too died shortly after. 11th Imam, could you scroll down?
Imam Hassan Askari.
If you scroll down a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
I keep forgetting because I'm looking at my notes, yes.
Okay, 11th Imam, Imam Hassan-i-Askari. He succeeded his father, Imam Ali Naqi, as the 11th Imam.
Okay, so these, I will send you the notes. It's useful to keep these and refer to them because they are important in the sense of hadith, the traditions of Islam and the Shia sect of Islam that we think are the rightful ones. Okay, now what happened after 11th Imam? What happened to the 12th Imam? The story is in the next paragraph. Quite interesting. Who else wants to read it? Louis, you're smiling. Go on.
I was smiling at Oshan.
Yeah.
Maybe someone would like to read, someone we haven't heard yet.
I think Adam Powers was just volunteering himself to read.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Where are we here? Imam Hassan-i-Askari?
Yes.
Okay. Imam Hassan Askari was the last of the Imams. It is believed that he and his wife, Nargis Khatun, had no children to succeed him after his death. During his ministry, a committee of 4 clergy members were Imam's assistants. The 4 Nawabs, Nawab-i-Arba.
That's Arabic. Arba means 4, yes.
Okay. They were, there's a little mouse. They were tax, zakat collectors. It is said that, zakat. Okay, that's.
The text is in Islam, even today, in Iran, they have to pay tax, which is called khums and zakat. There are 2 types of tax that the Muslims pay to the Imam, like Imam Khamenei, who is now the Imam that they follow, the religious leader. They have to pay tax. And this committee responsibility was to collect money as khums and zakat from the Muslims of those days, right? Carry on.
Yeah, it's kind of like the hukuk of the Baha'i thing. It is said that the caliph of the time came to them in the Imam Ali Askari's house and asked who is to replace the Imam. The first Nawab told him a lie. He said that the 11th Imam Hassan-i Askari had a 12-year-old son, Mahdi, who was appointed to succeed him, but he became scared of the enemies and went into hiding. In order to avoid their positions as tax collectors and avoid losing tax money, this lie was fabricated. Muhammad Jafar, a half-brother of Imam Ali Askari, though he told them the truth that his brother Imam-i Askari was impotent and never could have got a child, was made famous as Jafar-i Kazab.
Kazab, yes, liar.
Kazab means liar, yeah. After the passing of the 4 Nawabs, another 3 clergy replaced them, and for 40 years taught people this lie about the hidden 12th Imam, who has gone into hiding in a well and will only appear on the Day of Judgment. The Shia Islam is still waiting for the 12th Imam Mahdi to return on the Day of Resurrection. Aren't they more waiting for the Qayyum?
Hmm?
Isn't it, is it that the Mahdi, what is the big difference between the Qayyum and the Mahdi here? Because I was just got out of a talk with Mujan moment, and he said that the Sunnis are waiting more for the Mahdi, and the Shia are waiting for the Qayyum.
Yes. You see, from the meaning point of view, this is again my personal view, but what Mujan Momin knows a lot better. But you see, here we mention Mahdi because the son of Imam Hassan Askari was said, his name was said to be Mahdi. And he's the one who has disappeared. And that's why it's mentioned here that they are waiting for the 12th Imam to reappear because he's hiding. But what was Mr. Momin saying again? Tell us again.
He was just, the question was kind of in regards to the Sunni versus Shia prophecies, or the expectation. And he said that it was the Sunnis use the terminology Mahdi more, and the Shia use the terminology Qayyum more. I mean, it's a little confusing because they are interconnected somehow, or intertwined.
Yes.
So I would like to learn more about it.
Yes, maybe you could do a little research yourself and perhaps tell us as you have listened to next in the next session.
Yes.
But there was a lot of common things between the Sunnis and the Shias. For example, here we'll see when we read the next paragraph about the caliphs that the Sunnis believed. 2 of these caliphs were actually the imams of the Shia, that for a little while they became the leader of the Sunnis. So yes, in a sense, both could be, but Qayyim is the one who, who stands up. Kohen means somebody who stands up, who
arises.
Yes. And but this Mahdi, who was the son of this 11th Imam, was hiding. And if you say that the Shia are waiting for the 12th Imam to reappear and his name is Mahdi, is nothing, I don't think is nothing wrong to say that.
Yeah.
Although, of course, Mr. Momen is right in that sense. It's more common in Sunnis to say that. Okay.
Yeah, he also said just briefly that the Sunnis don't often speak so much about it. It's not There's not a lot of emphasis on it because there might be some relation to the return of Christ more in that. I don't know. I'll research more and I can.
Okay, good. All right. And 12th Imam, the Bab, according to the writings, is the return of the 12th Imam, whatever they call it. Qayyim or Mahdi or whatever, is the return of 12th Imam. Yeah? Okay. Now a little bit about the Sunnis, what their basic beliefs are.
Should I keep reading or?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. Sunni Islam, following the death of Prophet Muhammad, the Sunnis followed the four caliphs. The first caliph, Abu Bakr, the father of Aisha, Muhammad's youngest wife. Second caliph was Umar, and the father of Hafsa, Muhammad's second wife.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could just scroll down just so I can.
Good idea.
Just to give a little, room for the eyes there. Thank you. The caliph was Uthman, more like. He was the husband of Muhammad's daughters Ruqayya, and later Kulthum, like the singer. Uthman was a grandson of Hakim and Abdul Muttalib and Muhammad's paternal aunt. The fourth caliph was Ali, and the husband of Fatima.
Yeah, the same Ali who was the first Imam of the Shia.
Right. Yeah, and that was the big dispute, right? Because Ali was supposed to be. There's that in Ghadir Qum. That's where they say Muhammad. Some say Muhammad clearly chose Ali as his successor. So
yes,
yeah. And then it got political. These are the first four caliphs that the Sunnis believe in. Imam Ali's son and Muhammad's grandson Hassan, who was also the second Imam of Shia Islam, became the fifth caliph. Numerous other caliphs in different groups succeeded one another up to date. As a result, many divisions appeared in Islam in both Sunni as well as the Shia sects.
So basically, these four caliphs are the one that the Sunnis believe in. And after that, I mean, even during those four caliphs, there were groups of different caliphs. If you go online, if you're more interested, you can find in detail who they were. But these main ones are the ones that Sunnis follow. Any comments, any ideas, anybody else wants to share about these? If you find it's of interest, I will send these notes we read today to you tomorrow, perhaps. So if you want to do more research yourself, you can. Just allow. Yeah.
I might just add real quickly for people to get a little bit of a history. There's some really good films produced. I think there's these kind of famous Ramadan films that were made about this. I think one is called the something or other. I can post the link, and you learn a lot of the history and you see the characters, and it helps to kind of understand what was going on at the time, because there was a lot of battles. There was, you know, Ali was like the lieutenant in command, you could say.
Mhm.
So it's an interesting history that's worth digging into.
It's from the Baha'i point of view or somebody else?
I think it's the Sunni point of view, but if you read between the lines, I mean, it's just history, more or less.
Okay.
So they don't go into the kind of problematic stuff, but so it's a good history. I can share those with Lewis or something.
Yes. Okay. What's your name? Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Adam.
Adam.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, and just that last paragraph explains about the 70 or 40 of the followers of Noah, and it's just the fewness of the followers.
Sorry, Rosta.
Jana.
Sunni people, they're waiting for a Qaim as well?
Not as the 12th Imam, but I don't know what title they give them. As Adam said, Mujan Momin in his, he explains that Sunnis are more in the belief, as the name goes, that the Mahdi would appear.
It's the same person as
Yeah,
they believe.
same.
Shia and Sunni, they both believe in one person. They don't believe in two people.
Well, we know that it is one person.
Yes.
Even from the point of view of other religions, like Return of Christ, or in Hinduism or Zoroastrian, where Shah Bahram is supposed to come. And all these people, we say it's one. And Bab and Baha'u'llah, the return of those past prophets. But
no, what I want to know, do they agree to the same person between the two sections?
yes,
Sect?
yeah. Anyone who would want to?
Can I say something, Dr.
Yes,
Beheshti?
yes.
I don't know everything what I'm saying, but just to briefly,
yes.
There is a difference in the Gaim is the hidden imam who's supposedly still alive, and that the Shia Muslims are waiting for that person to come back. And as Adam said with the talk with Mujan, he was saying that when the Bab came about, they said, well, you're not 1,000 years old. We know your mother and father. You can't be this Gaim. So the Shia are really waiting for that specific person. At the same time, there is also another figure, the Mahdi, who will come at the end of days.
Yes.
So for us, we can easily say it's the same person.
Yes.
But in the Sunni sect, they wouldn't at all think about the Gaim. But in Shia, the Gaim would also exist, that's going to come at the end of days. Whether they put much significance on him, I don't know exactly. And along with that, also the Sunnis believe in the return of Christ.
Yes.
Again, maybe the same person. So I don't know if that clears up a little bit, but that's
good. That's very helpful.
my
Mehri, does that answer your question, Mehrija?
Thank you. Yes, thanks.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So sorry we have gone a little too long for this session. So you must all be sleepy now after all that. Anyway, could somebody say an ending prayer if there is nothing else to add?
Tired bodies, but awakened souls.
Uh-huh. Are we volunteering somebody? Louis, you want to do it?
I can do one, yeah. And
Yeah.
maybe someone else can volunteer themselves.
Okay.
Anyone?
I can say one. I can say one in Dutch.
Okay.
O mijn God, verenig de harten van uw dienaren en openbaar hun uw verheven plan. Mogen zij uw geboden nakomen en bij uw wet verblijven. Help hen, o God, in hun streven en schenk hun kracht u te dienen. O God, laat hen niet aan zichzelf over, maar leid hun schreden met het licht van uw kennis en verblijd hun hart met uw liefde. Waarlijk, gij zijt hun helper en hun Heer. Behouden.
Kulibalin suwina ochosa masotsu kubatulam Kulibalin suwina ochosa masotsu kubatulam Kulibaling suwina, ochosa, maswas, kubatulang Kulibaling suwina, ochosa, maswas, kubatulang Kulibaling suwina, ochosa, maswas, kubatulang
Oh Señor mi Dios, ayuda a tus amados a ser firmes en tu fe, a caminar por tus senderos y a ser constantes en tu causa. Concédeles tu gracia para resistir los asaltos del egoísmo y la pasión y seguir la luz de la guía divina. Tú eres el poderoso, el bondadoso, el que subsiste por sí mismo, el donador, el compasivo, el todopoderoso, el todo generoso.
Well, thank you all for being so patient and so helpful. Thank you all very much.
And thank you very much, and Louis.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Allah
Allah.
Allah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very
Hi,
good.
buddy.
Very, very good.